Good evening and welcome back to the Model Makers workshop. And tonight what we're going to do, because I want to get on with these subs, so I'm going to do some more work, but actually just work as I normally would on an evening when I'm not actually videoing. So I thought perhaps you could see. So what we're actually going to produce, that's the bit like I showed you in the last video, and that will attach to that, which will level that up and give this bogie on the end there room to maneuver. So the way I produce these is, I'll show you. Right, let's move things out the way a little bit. I tend to work in a bit of a mess, so I've got loads of things going on at the same time. So what we're going to do, this is made out of an aluminium sheet. This is some aluminium that I inherited. I bought some sheets already cut like that, very cheaply, but I've had them for a long time and didn't know what to use them for, but now I do. Right, so what I'm going to do is cut a strip off of this. So this is how I do it, and this is something I've been doing for a long time. So we want, in old money, 3/4 of an inch is the width of this. So I will mark that out using an old technique with a ruler, like so. Mark it out to there, like so. Another one down here, like so. It doesn't have to be that accurate. It's just the wooden block that's on there is about that width, but it doesn't really matter. So I'm now going to put this down like so. Join up the marks. I use a scriber because it's aluminium. If you were going to put bends and things in it, they always suggest that you use a pencil, because if you score aluminium, you could actually put a weakness, but I'm going to cut on the line. So in this case, it doesn't actually matter. But going back to my engineering time, that's what you would have used. Right, now, this is the tool I'm going to use. I bought this Machine Mart. I went into the Machine Mart and I bought this. It's basically a hand nibbler. Now, if you was to cut this with a pair of tin snips, which a lot of people would, what you'll find, you will distort the metal as you go. This cuts a little piece that curls up. I'll show you as we go. So you do waste a little bit in between, but what you do come out with is a more or less flattish piece. So it doesn't use a lot of energy. So what you do is you put it like this, line it up on the line and squeeze, and then you just keep going along. There's a lot of kind of moving it about to get it into the position, and then you can go along the line. So I'm going to bore you a bit while I cut this, but I just want to show you how I cut pieces. This works with brass, provided it's not really thick, but nice brass, about the same thickness of that it would cut. So if you're making a loco or anything, modelling, and you're scratch building and you want to cut into metal, it's not as hard as you think it is. You can get machine nibblers that will do this, but of course there's noise, a lot of bits and pieces flying around, whereas this is something you can just sit and do in your workshop. Doesn't disturbing anyone else. You may wonder while I'm wobbling, what I'm doing is pushing the blade so it's right down in, so that when I do press to cut, I'm getting the full width of the cut in one go. So we're going for it quite easily. It cuts through quite nicely. Doesn't really need any lubrication. All you need to do is just keep it moving. When the curl up bit underneath gets too much, I'll show you that in a minute, and you'll be able to see what that's like. So we're probably about a third of the way through now. But this is the way I do this. These are things that I don't always show. I just have the bit already cut, but you may just want to know how it's done and a way of doing it yourself. I don't know how many years I've had these, but I've used them a lot, because a lot of things I've made in metal I can just cut out with this. It's better than trying to saw it with a hacksaw, because, you know, how would you go along that width? You've got to have it held in something to saw. Yeah, this is fiddly. I'm not saying it's not fiddly, but there we are. Right, I'm going to take the tool out now, and you will see underneath the big curl up bit like so. Right, best thing to do with that is to just wobble it from side to side, and eventually, he says, I can feel it getting looser and looser, it will just snap off. So you've got a coil of aluminium like so. That's it. I'll take that off, leave that out of the way, and then just carry on, because if it gets bigger and bigger, there's more bulk to go in the jaws, and then all you need to do is to get that back up into where it was, and then you'll find that it'll cut quite easily again, because it hasn't got the bulk. So you might have to do that a couple of times depending on the piece you're cutting out, but as you can see, it's still staying flat. If you get a little tiny bit in it, well, you can just gently bend it out, or just put it down with a mallet or something and just give it a little bit of persuasion on a flat surface to put it back flat. But for what we're doing, it's really good. But I've made sides of a couple of locos that I built by using this technique, cutting it out with no distortion. Whereas if you do use the tin snips, you'll find it curls up. And of course, all right, I'm not saying you can't flatten it, because the problem is with some of these softer metals, when you flatten them out, if you hit them too hard, you will actually distort it. It stretches, and you won't get really what you were after. Whereas like this, all I need to do is dress this along with a file when I finish, just to take the sharp rough edges off, and it's basically then ready to cut to length and drill the hole in, and then that's another piece made. So yep. So I'm just getting you back on the screen so I can see where we are on here. I think we can see that okay now. So this is what we're going to do, is just cut this out, and then I will cut it to length, and then I'll just go off. Now I've got a small pillar drill in here which I use for drilling. Now the reason I use that instead of a hand drill is because you need it to get it square, and sometimes you need to hold whatever you're drilling in a vise. So I find it a better way. You can buy a pillar drill, you could look around for second-hand ones, or I don't think I paid a great deal for that, the one I've got, 70-80 pounds I think, but it's very useful for when you're making stuff in either model engineering, or you're modelling but you're not using plastics. You know, I mean, I do drill plastics with it, but if you're using perhaps aluminiums and brass, you want something a bit more accurate and a better way of holding things. And especially when you're drilling a hole, you may want it in a very accurate place, so you've marked out your piece, used a centre punch and all the rest of it. So you need to get it in a position where the drill's not going to wander, and it's all more of a positive way of drilling a hole. But people that have done things freehand before and afterwards perhaps wish that they hadn't, because it's in the wrong place, especially if you've gone through a lot of work to produce a piece and then you've put a hole that's gone and run off a little bit to what it should be. It's very difficult to put that hole back in the right place without perhaps making a new one. So if you're serious about making some things, you really have got to have the right gear. You can obviously use a hand drill in a you can get a drill stand for it, so that is another way that you can do it. Right, that's cut off. As you can see, that just wants dressing up, and that's all ready to use for another piece. As always, I've dropped it on the floor. Let's pick that up. Right, then my trusty thing that I always use, obviously, is a file. Because what happens if you don't take these rough edges off, you may cut yourself on it. Even though it's aluminium, it still has sharp, and you get like splinters off of it. So yeah, there's a tiny little bow in that, and I can just take that bow out by just persuading it like that. But basically, that's flat enough for what we want for this job, and it's flatter than you would get if you were using tin snips. So unless you know a way of using tin snips that I don't, but I've used them over the years to cut things out, and then spent hours dressing it and trying to get it flat afterwards. But so there we are on that. So the next thing is to measure the length. So we use the same because they're all basically the same. So on that, we need to get that to, let's have a look here, like so. That is about 5 1/4. I still use a lot of imperial. It doesn't really matter whatever you're using, really, to make whatever it is you want to make. So 5 1/4 on that. Try to find where my scriber went. There she is. So 5 1/4 is there. Like so. Then all I need to do is use my square, put that on, like so. Square that off, it's just to give me an indication as to where we're working. So that's on there now. And then get the trusty cutters again. So again, you can see the curled up bit that's in there. It just comes out. I haven't thought of anything I can use them for at the moment, but you never know. You might think of something, but yeah, it's a bit of a waste of material, but the finished product of cutting this out neatly is well worth that. So, and now we're just cutting it. I mean, I could have just run this off with a hacksaw, which would have come off quite easily, but I just got so used to using these. By the time I've walked over there, set everything up to do that, then there we are. So all I would do then is I round all the corners off. I round the corners off because obviously this can be moving inside and it stops anything from getting damaged. And then the next thing to do will be to mark the hole in there and drill the hole and fit it onto the other bogie. So yes, so that's how I make those bits, and they're the tools that I use to do it with. So I hope you find that useful, and yes, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. There we are.